every marketing role looks different. And all of those titles look different depending on the organization that you're working on, depending on your audience. So I think another challenge is understanding who else does what I actually do that could help me come up with some strong solutions here for my marketing strategy.
Every B2B marketing team faces challenges when they have to do more with less. Should you build skills internally? Should you find a freelancer? Should you search for the right agency? This is Tech Qualified, a podcast for the scrappy B2B marketing teams. In each episode, Meredith Metsker, a senior content leader at a tech company, and Justin Brown, a marketing agency owner, uncover how marketing teams generate qualified opportunities with limited resources. Every episode helps you get one step closer to winning over your ideal customers.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tech Qualified. I'm Meredith Metsker and I'm joined by my co-host Justin Brown.
Hello.
This show is brought to you by New North. New North specializes in working with B2B marketers who have to do more with less. When you partner with New North, you turn your small, scrappy marketing team into a growth engine. This show is all about small marketing teams at B2B tech companies. I work on a small marketing team at a tech company, and Justin works at an agency helping small marketing teams, so we kind of have both perspectives there. I am super excited to welcome our guest today, Rachel Cottam. Rachel is the Director of Content at Delivery Solutions, and she and I have known each other on LinkedIn for at least a year or two now, right?
Yep, so excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super pumped to have you here, and I know we kind of share the same challenge of being on small marketing teams and small content teams, and I'm excited to talk with you today about some of those challenges and then just kind of how to manage those challenges, the isolation that can sometimes come from being a small content team, and then how you manage those. So with all of that, thank you so much for joining us on the show today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. This will be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. So to kick us off, Rachel, can you just talk to me a little bit about that isolation factor? Is that a challenge for you? And if so, how do you manage it?
In my experience, I've been a marketing party of one. I have also been on teams where the marketing department is close to 100 folks. And currently I'm on day 2 of a marketing org that's about 7 people. So I have been in marketing teams of all sizes. And I think particularly as content marketers, the work that we do is so niche that sometimes it's not well understood by the rest of the organization. In a former life, I was a high school English teacher, and that was a similar industry where everyone feels like they can teach because everyone has been through school. And content marketing is very similar, where everybody thinks they can do social or blogs or podcasts because we've all read it, we've all listened to it, and we think, oh, I know how to do that. I can hack that. And so one of the things that I think is a challenge as a small marketing team or a content party of one is making sure that you put forth your strategy and then you also own your metrics.
Yeah, there's not really people to bounce ideas off of. You're just kind of responsible for both the strategy and the execution. And I know from my experience too that is a lot sometimes. Mm-hmm. So I'm curious, as either a solo content marketer or a content marketer on a small content team, what are some of those biggest challenges and how do you kind of deal with those?
I think the isolation that you spoke to, marketers can be extroverts. We tend to be observant of the world around us. And if we're not extroverts, I should clarify, I am a extroverted introvert. So, I really enjoy my book time, but we also are studiers of human nature. We observe the world around us. We ask those psychological questions in order to best present the story to our audience. So I think, Meredith, that question around isolationism can be really challenging for marketing professionals. And I think we naturally build our own communities when those issues exist. But I don't want to undersell how hard that can be, finding a community of experts who do the same thing that you do. And I think to the earlier point, an additional challenge with that is every marketing role looks different. Your title may be digital marketing manager. Your title may be head of content. Your title may be copywriter or content strategist or content marketing manager. And all of those titles look different depending on the organization that you're working on, depending on your audience. So I think another challenge is understanding who else does what I do, what I actually do, that could help me come up with some strong solutions here for my marketing strategy.
Yeah, it's one of the things I find super fascinating about the small content marketing team is that in a way you serve as, I don't want to say the entire face of the company, but everything that's being developed or created that comes out of the company, whether that's going, content that's getting distributed on social media, whether it's ad campaigns getting distributed on paid that are developed through the content marketing team from some form of owned media campaign that you developed, you become like this central figure within the organization and how the organization is perceived from outside the organization. But then you also have that everybody feels like they could do the job. And it's a very interesting dichotomy to me that is like, oh yeah, that's our like one person content marketing team kind of like brushed under the rug. But then on the other hand, the entire face of the company and everything that gets distributed and pushed out. How do you feel about that kind of balance when you're working on a small marketing team? And before I ask, actually, it's something I talk to clients a lot about is marketing. Like when I go to think about who our ideal customer profile is, right? It's the small marketing team or the small marketer. I work with lots of single person CMOs. And I think one of the biggest things that drives marketers, and this was a thing we went through when we went through a story brand exercise and we're really trying to identify what makes marketers tick. And, you see on the outside, people talk about things like MQLs and just audience. If you're not a marketer, I want you to know that like MQLs and leads do not make marketers tick based on my understanding and looking into these things. What I've really determined is that marketers really want to have a seat at the table. Like, we want to be taken seriously by the people who we work with. Do leads come with that and results and revenue and pipeline and all of those things? Sure. But when we go and we do these actions and we make things that we're proud of, or people view the company in the right light, and then we want to be viewed that way. So I guess, Rachel, my question is, how do you feel about when you're on a small marketing team or a content marketing team of one or whatever it may be? How do you feel about the level of importance within the role and then how it's kind of viewed by the rest of the company?
I think all human beings want to feel important in their role, whether they're working in marketing or engineering or they're the CEO of a company. They want to feel that the work they do matters and that it's taken seriously. And so I think marketers are no different, right? We want to be seen as experts in our space. We want to know that our voice is trusted and that when a strategic decision has to be made, we are going to be consulted and that we will have ownership over the result. So I don't know if that quite answers your question, but I think obviously we all want to feel like the work that we do matters, that what we're putting our 9 to 5 into, that it actually makes a positive difference in the world, even if it's for just a small business owner or for a retail company or whoever our target persona might be.
And how do you balance the different things that are asked? So kind of in that last question, it was all about the sheer weight that falls onto a content marketing team or a small content marketing team, a small marketing team. How do you balance the different requests that come in? It's like people think that content marketing is, well, they can do video, they can write, they can do things on the website, they can handle design. You're like, you realize these are all different mediums for one person. So how do you balance all of the different initiatives as a small content marketing team that you're asked to execute on?
I think I probably have 2 answers to that. The first one is advice that I give to moms like myself who transitioned back into the workplace after a career that was not in marketing. And that is to say yes to everything. I'm not a designer. No, I'm not a designer, but can I go on Canva and can I try and hack it? Yes. And then more importantly, can I ask for feedback from people who actually know what they're doing and then implement that feedback? Absolutely, I can. So I think growth mindset is huge as a marketer, especially if, like myself, you transition from a different industry. try on different hats, try out different projects. You won't know what you like or what you can actually do until you've given it a go. I think for myself, my background was in teaching, communication. I didn't realize the level of expertise that I have in using words to convey a specific story or meaning until I did it. And the first time I wrote a press release, all of a sudden folks are like, oh, this is what a press release should sound like. And again, I didn't know I had that strength in myself. So I think as marketers, we have to be willing to trust our gut, know that we have strengths, whether or not we've tried out a certain channel or medium before, we can probably figure it out. And again, more importantly, get the feedback to make it better.
Yeah, I like I like the say yes thing. I have a funny story. I met this guy one time who said he had that approach. He's like, I say yes, like anytime someone asks me, and he was like, one of those like people who's like, I climbed Everest or something. Like, just you're like, okay, I get why you do keynote speeches. I don't think we'd probably be friends, but you're like still super interesting. We live very different lives. But he was like, I say yes to everything. I was like, okay, that's cool. And so I guess he did an open mic night one time. And he just like wrote a monologue, and then someone was like from CBS that was like there, and they were like, is that monologue part of like a longer screenplay or whatever? And he was like, yes. And he got an entire play produced and got to do his monologue like on Leno or something. I was just like, of course you have. That's crazy. But it is interesting. Like it was kind of the same idea, which is like, don't pigeonhole yourself into like little things that you only think you can do. It will benefit you to be able to take on different projects, which then leads to my last question. And Meredith, I promise I'll let you get some in because I know you and Rachel are tight outside of just here. But I did have a question on that, which is how you balance as a small content marketing team, how you balance insourcing versus outsourcing. Like, what are some things that you're like, yes, I do that? And then what are the things that you're like, okay, I tried that and I don't like that, and I want to go and get someone else to do this thing for me?
Yeah, so I think that's definitely the second part of that answer for me, which is you have to be your own project manager, which I know is a really technical kind of boring answer. But one of the first things that I do when entering an organization is ask, do you have an intake form? Do you have any kind of request form? Because more likely, as a marketer, whether your team is 1 person or 10, you're just getting requests through Slack, and then you have to drop everything to fill that request. Well, that's important to some degree to be able to flex and say, hey, this is a really high potential client. We need to put all our effort towards that. Or, hey, we've got a funding announcement coming up. We need this to be splashy. Like, it is important to be agile, but you will be more successful in prioritizing your work if other folks can see all of it. So Meredith and I actually had this kind of funny back and forth the other day about like, do you have a content calendar or not? Now, I think folks should be able to work how they feel comfortable, so I'm not going to dictate the solution. But I will say that for me, the number one value of having a content calendar is for the visibility of external stakeholders. So that when they say, I have this slide deck that needs to be updated today, I can then show them, here are the 5 other priorities I have for this week. Which of these would you like me to deprioritize to get this slide deck done? And then they get to decide, whether it's the CEO coming to me or the VP of sales, they get to look at that list and say, oh, dang it, I really wanted that case study by the end of the week. We've got a healthcare client. I want them to see that. And so they can say, you know what, I'll take the deck. You finish the case study. Or they can say, okay, I'll let my team know that healthcare case study is going to be another 2 weeks out because this deck is so high priority. So be your own project manager. Build your task list, your content calendar, whatever works for you. Just make sure other people can see it, and it will help a ton with prioritization.
See, that's why I keep thinking I need to actually build out a content calendar, because in this back and forth, we were talking about how Rachel has one and how mine just kind of exists in my head. Because I am a content team of 1 and we are a very small marketing team. So far, it has worked, but I know the day is going to come that I need to actually build it out, use it for those external stakeholders, use it for that internal marketing. So I know that day is coming. And so when that day comes, Rachel, I will be reaching out to you.
Yeah, please. And Meredith, you're so freaking organized that I know what you're doing right now is working, right? But I think I've always been in those organizations that the number one priority is scale. It's like, how are we going to scale? How are we going to scale fast? And so being able to delegate some of my work, or being able to say, here's other people who can jump in and step in and do this, has gone a long way in order to scale those organizations more quickly. So no dig on what you're doing, Meredith. You're a pro. You're an absolute genius at what you do.
Well, thank you. I don't know about genius, but I appreciate that.
Of course.
I'm curious, as a leader on a small marketing team and a small content team, how do you go about staying up to date on marketing trends or kind of what's new? And then sort of along those lines, I'm also curious, how do you level up when you don't have a bunch of other content marketers to bounce ideas off of in your company?
So to answer the first question, I'm on LinkedIn a lot. And I mean, that's how we met, right?
Right.
And I really do love learning from other experts in that space and hearing the work that they're doing, hearing the way that they're absorbing the trends or the same reports that I'm reading. Well, what was their take on it? And then to your second question, how do I really level up? Well, I've learned that for me, the face-to-face interaction actually matters a lot. And I think this stems to that original question you asked, is that challenge of isolation. For me, when I started in a new role in January of this year, I went from that really large org where we had about 1,000-person team. We were a media publishing company, so our content department alone was close to 100 people. And then all of a sudden I jumped back into startup world, which felt like home for me. It was a lovely transition where I was the only content marketer on the team. There were only 4 marketers in the company, including myself. And I was being tasked with defining strategy and ultimately hiring more content marketers to support the work that we were doing. So, and forgive me if I'm jumping ship here, or jumping ahead, really. This is where the idea of these content marketing squads, which you and I have been a part of for about a year now, really started. Is I felt that nicheness of my role, that I was the only person in my organization who truly understood content marketing, and I wanted to be able to gut check my work with someone else. In my last organization, I had a peer with the same title of me. We were both directors of content. And so if I needed something, I hit him up and we were able to kind of gut check our templates, gut check our strategies, how our brands were performing. I didn't have that come January in this new role. And so I reached out to you. I reached out to a few other folks on LinkedIn. And I just said, hey, I'm looking for B2B marketers, parties of one or small teams who know what it's like to do this work, and I want us to bounce ideas off of each other. And I can't tell you how meaningful those virtual Zoom face-to-face meetings became in helping me level up my skills as a content marketer.
I would love to dig into those squads a little bit more, just for the sake of our audience, because as you said, I'm in some of those squads, so I know how it works. But can you just tell us a little bit more about what those entail? Yeah, what kind of topics you cover and things like that?
Yeah, happy to describe them a bit. And as I mentioned, the idea was kind of in flux when we launched them. My idea was just, I know there are other people out there who are doing what I'm doing. And just honestly, I looked at their companies, I looked at their titles, and I was like, this feels like a good fit. We came together on probably Google Meets, probably not even Zoom because, it's free. And we typically started every meeting out by just saying, hey, what's on your mind this week? What marketing questions are you asking? Sometimes a person would share a lesson learned or a recent experiment that they had run, but that brainstorm session really became the most valuable moment within those content marketing squads. We've talked about things from reporting, like what do you use for your reporting dashboard? What metrics are you measured to? And how do you make sure that those are up to date and shared, again, with the external stakeholders? We've talked about brand guides, style guides, like how do you put yours together? Do you even have one? Who actually uses it in the organization? And if they're not using it, how can we get them to use it? We've talked about things like personal branding. As marketers, we tend to test the skills we're using in our personal profiles, but how can you do that if you want to grow an audience as well? So that's kind of the day-to-day of what those look like. I don't know, Meredith, anything you would add having participated in those?
Yeah, I think they've just been super helpful. And I know I've mentioned this in the squads before too, but I appreciate that there is structure. And so we kind of know coming in what topic we might be talking about, but there's also room for, hey, I've got this problem. I need to talk about it with somebody. Like I've done that before, both in meetings and over email. Like at one point, I think I was working on an editorial guide. I said, I have no idea where to start. team, can you send me your examples of your style guides and your editorial guides? And everyone just showed up and shared their guides, and it was so, so helpful. So yeah, they've been really valuable. So thank you for starting those.
Of course. I think the specificity and the solidarity have been most meaningful for folks. I think, like you said, seeing specific examples, not just some like gated content resource that some marketing agency is posting to try and get our business, but like, no, what are you actually using for your editorial guide or your reporting dashboard? The specifics there have been so useful. And the fact that we feel safe sharing them because we're in these really small, intimate groups. And then the solidarity, I've heard from so many folks like, oh my gosh, just knowing that there's someone else out there asking these same questions, it makes me feel heard. Like, it makes me feel encouraged to keep fighting for a certain marketing experiment, or it makes me understand like, oh, I'm not the only one who got turned down for that question or needs to double explain this, idea to someone else. So I think the specificity and solidarity have gone a long way in those squads.
Do you have an example? Either of you, this could be an open-ended question. Do you have an example of something that you discussed in the marketing squad that you then walked away with and implemented?
I mean, the editorial guide. I did end up writing an editorial and style guide for UConnect, and I leaned heavily on some of the examples that folks in the content marketing squad shared with me.
Yeah, I think that's one for sure. We talked about editorial and style guides. I've like got my notes. I'm reviewing just today, actually. Just this morning, I was in a squad group. We were supposed to talk about reporting, and somebody came in and was like, hey, I'm launching a podcast starting January. And we literally spent the whole 30 minutes just helping her brainstorm angles or talk about things that haven't worked in podcasts that we've listened to. So I think that was something really meaningful as well. I'm trying to think if there was anything else recently. I do remember one conversation where we just talked about like, what are you doing to build pipeline? Because that's always the question from the higher org is like, oh, no, what's this cool creative campaign? No, that's not what they're asking. They're saying, how are you building pipeline? And one of the things I walked away with was zero volume keywords and the way that one of our peers was using them in her organization. And I just thought it was such a good example that, yeah, you see it on LinkedIn, like you see it in the trends, but to hear the way that her organization was actually using it allowed me to then go and test it in my organization too.
Awesome. All right, I got a good one here. So Meredith, we had our first interview recently for this show, and this question actually went kind of well, and I used it in a hypothetical, but now I get to use it for real because you really are on day 2 of your job. So my question is, okay, so you're brand new to this role, 2 days, I think, and so what does your first quarter, 6 months and 1 year content marketing plan for a new role look like? And you can answer this question however you could be like, Justin, I have no idea what I'm doing in 1 year. I literally started 2 days ago. But I'm curious, what roadmap have you set out for yourself? Because I think that there's so many people, they get the new role, and especially in content marketing, there is a lot of do this. Oh, we hired you. All right, great, Rachel. Now I've got 100 tasks you're going to do. Doesn't matter what you want to do. The reason we hired you is because sales needs this X, Y, and Z, the CEO, whatever. So I'm curious how you plan on setting up the department, your role, etc.
Yeah, well, maybe I'll talk about what has worked in the past as well as maybe tease at what's coming, because had my laptop for 24 hours, still learning to understand who my audience actually is, how the product works.
Well, let's start there. Let's do the little workshop. So who is your audience now? Who do you sell to? Who is your company selling to?
Definitely too early for this.
Oh, this is great. No, this is like a window into the experience that we all have to deal with. So to the best of your ability.
I am absolutely going to skip this question. You can edit it out if you want.
Sounds good. Moving on.
Because I think understanding your audience is just that critical step 1. And I'm not interested in getting it wrong just yet. I'll get it wrong with my boss, but will I get it wrong on a public podcast? No, right?
That we'll share with the world. And then we can all point back to when she actually knows and has done the valuable workshops. Okay, I'm going to stop talking and let you answer this question.
No, you're great. And I do appreciate you challenging me and putting me on the spot because these are the questions I'm asking, right? Is do we actually know who our audience is? Are we marketing to them? Are these leads, like these contacts that we have in our email system, are these even the right people? So these are absolutely the questions I'm asking. But I do want to kind of jump back to that more recent experience since I did start in January. So almost had a full year on the role and was able to kind of actually see some of these things through. I will say the first thing that I would recommend to others and that I try to do within my own role is find a way you can make an impact within the first 30 days. And maybe that's more career advice than marketing advice. But like if folks can see within the first 30 days that you're not only doing the discovery work, which is critically important, but you're either jumping in and hosting a webinar, or you're jumping in on a sales call, or you're jumping in and in this most recent role, I said, hey, I can get social media off the ground. So within my first 30 days, we ramped the random one post a week up to a 3 to 5 day posting schedule every week. So that's a small thing, but those wins send a clear message to your team that you're committed to experimentation, you're committed to execution, and that regardless of what your role is, you're going to find a way to make an impact. So that's what I look at within my first 30 days. Within those first 30 days, I'm also doing the discovery work around who is the customer, where are the subject matter experts within our own company, because they always exist, right? There's always at least one person in your company that could closely represent your buyer. So how are you going to leverage them? Like that's really, really important to me. And then looking at areas where we can improve efficiencies. So saying, hey, there are some structures already in place here. Oftentimes there are. Sometimes you are truly building from scratch, which is incredibly fun. But most of the time, you're joining somebody else's CRM, you're joining somebody else's project management or lack thereof. You know, you're jumping in it and you're able to see with those fresh eyes, like what is working and what clearly is not. So those are some of the things that I'm doing first 30 days.
Can I jump in on the first 30 days thing? Because I love that. So we do the same thing. So we're an agency, right? And we need to use our first 30 days. Same situation, right? Rachel, we get a new client and you ask me, what does the client do? And I'm like, I don't know yet, but we're going to do great. We're going to do great marketing for them. I promise. But one of the things that we do to get early wins ourselves is in the first 30 days, we want to get through research and strategy on the company, but they're like, cool, you did research and like wrote a 50-page strategy document. What does that do for me? So one of the things that we do is when we're doing our kickoff actually with a client, we conduct it on Riverside, which is the tool that we're using right now to record this. And then we turn the kickoff into multiple repurposed videos as well as 2 long form blog posts. Cause we're usually because I work with small marketing teams. I of 0 to 5. So sometimes I'm working with a founder. Lots of times the CEO or founder is in on the kickoff. And they're sitting there just spewing everything about why they started the company, who they help, what the goals are. And we're like, well, this is gold. And so what we do is we take that, and that way we have a deliverable in the first 30 days that a lot of times we don't even tell them we're going to do that. We're like, oh, look, we did a thing. And then people are like, oh, sweet. Marketing is like they're working on something. So I just really like vibe with that idea of trying to get, like, we're constantly having to prove to people why we exist and how we help. And if you can just get like easy wins, especially from things you're already doing, like we're doing in that situation, we're already conducting this kickoff. Why not use it to create content? And then people are like, thank you, instead of why are you creating content? I'm just saying I already did. You can't tell me not to. I already made it. You can throw it in the trash if you want. You don't have to use this, but it exists now. So I love it.
Yeah. I love that, and I'm going to steal it. I think that idea of creating value before being even asked to create value is just so critical. And like, again, it's a skill I wish I could teach everyone who's trying to move up in their career. Like, don't wait to be asked to add value. Like, just find a way to build it. And I love that you're recording those calls. I've seen a lot of folks within content who are like, I record every call with a customer. In my most recent role, we did these live demos and we record them anytime a customer comes on. We tell the customer in advance, like, hey, we're not going to distribute these without your permission, but do we, without fail, get incredible customer quotes from those live webinar demos that we can then repurpose and ship out? And are they bound to, like, they're likely to say, yes, use them.
Yeah.
So again, I'll still ask for permission, please. But I love that idea of just creating value. The other thing I would add is that in my first typically 30 days, sometimes more like 45, I'm without fail doing an audit where, again, it's like you're saying, I'm trying to add value right away. So I'm saying, hey, here's a website or a typo on your website that you missed. Or here's a social media post or a blog post that I already repurposed in 4 different ways. Like, here's some ways that we can use it. Here's what our competitors are doing. I just went ahead and ran this through SEMrush, or I looked at our LinkedIn analytics or whatever it is. And I'm going to share that data up front so that they know I'm not just willy-nilly creating content, but I am always going to be informed by the data as I make the next decision for our content strategy.
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah, I love all that stuff. It's all, the more you can do, if, whatever the saying, first impressions last a lifetime. It's true. Like, if you can come in and prove there are just a lot of negative misconceptions about marketing. And if you can just prove that I don't care about whatever you think. Yeah, I'm just going to show you what I'm going to do. And as marketing for you, you're going to get things delivered. You're not even going to know you needed them, and they're going to show up. And then all of a sudden, again, we go back to, we've got a seat at the table, and people take us seriously. And when we have ideas, people actually listen, and you can be more in a strategic capacity than an order-taking capacity, which I think every marketer worth their salt wants that. We want to be able to say, this is what I think we should do, versus CEO says this is what marketing should do. And the same CEOs are the ones that I give videos to that I got it from the interview, and they're like, so what do I do with this? And I'm like, what are we not going to do with it? I mean, it can go on social media. We can use it in a paid media campaign. You can get embedded within a blog post. Oh, right, by the way, we wrote a blog post, and those are the people telling us what to do for marketing. So we just want a seat at the table to be able to be taken seriously with these ideas that we have. So yeah, so you got a busy 30 days ahead of you, Rachel.
Oh yeah, we're getting to it. It's going to be
There's a lot of things we're doing in 30 days.
Yeah, I love it. Honestly, I think it's always, and I always tell folks when they join my team too, that I'm like, please take advantage of your perspective in this time frame, because we all get into a rut and we just don't notice the things that we're doing that aren't working anymore. So I don't know. It's kind of fun to be in that position again.
I'm in it all the time. I mean, we bring on new clients and have to do the first 30 days all the time. And it's just a critical time for setting up marketing, making sure you have good goals, understand the ICP, which I agree with you and was not a fair question, but I'm not going to cut it out because now we can use that. No, but now we can use that to show people like this stuff takes time. Like it does take time, and we don't want to be wrong. And we do have to ask questions and conduct interviews with people, subject matter experts internally. I mean, so part of ours is we do quantitative and qualitative data for anytime we bring on a new customer. And that's doing some of those things that you said, right? Like doing audits of content, brand, website. What are you doing for SEO, paid, whatever? But then there's also the qualitative component, which is I want to do interviews with the founder or a subject matter expert or something like that. And you clearly have not had the chance to do that because you're on day 2, which was an unfair question by me as someone who does this all the time. So,
but listen, am I going
apologize.
to? No, you're good. Am I going to listen to those sales calls? Yes. Like, am I going to ask for demo recordings? Absolutely. Am I going to get into the sandbox? Am I going to find ways to get into communities where our customers are having the conversation outside of our business? Yes, because I want to hear it from their mouth. I don't want to hear what our marketing deck says our persona is or what our marketing deck says those pain points are. I want to hear it from the real people, the real human beings who would potentially use our product. So it's a good question.
Oh man, it's not, yeah, you've got a busy next month coming up. So many things, which kind of brings me to my next question. As a fellow marketer on small content teams, I know that I often wonder if I am doing enough. Yeah, am I doing enough? There's no one else in my company to compare myself to or compare my work to. So I'm curious, do you ever feel that way? And then if so, how do you gauge if you're doing enough?
I feel that way every day. And I think most marketers would agree with you. There is just this huge ocean of marketing activity that we could chase. But the best marketers that I've worked with have understood how to focus. And if we try to do all of it, if we try and go after every single social media channel, if we try to write blog posts about every single potential bullet point of our messaging, we're going to miss. And so for me, the way that I cope with those feelings is by constantly checking in on my priorities. For some folks, that's listed through an OKR structure. And if you see your marketing priority is not actually to get new customers, but to upsell to current customers, then that redefines the content marketing work that I'm going to do that quarter. If the OKR, for example, is more about strict email capture, and that's all we want to do, then we know the style of content marketing that we're going to create. So I think it all comes to aligning your marketing strategy with the business goals, which is hard to do. And again, if we go back to that career advice, the very best individual contributors are doing this all the time, where they are saying, here's how my work has impacted bottom line. Again, whether that's OKRs, whether that's revenue coming in, whether that's time savings or cost savings through some of those efficiencies gained, you have to align your day-to-day work to the larger needs of the business. Otherwise, you're never going to prove your value internally.
Right. And that's so important, especially when you are early in a job like you are right now.
Yeah, no pressure.
Yeah, right? Cool. Well, I do want to be mindful of our time here. So before I start wrapping this up, Rachel or Justin, is there anything else either of you would like to add?
No, I'm pretty good. The only thing I would add is Rachel forgot to say that her other favorite place to consume marketing content to learn is Marketers in Demand, where we host 10 podcasts, including this
favorite.
one.
Yeah, number one spot. I'm going to add something, Meredith, since you asked me. My other favorite thing to talk about is allyship in the workplace. And I just don't think there's any better place than marketing communities. As Meredith mentioned at the beginning, we all feel a little isolated. We all feel a little nervous in our work that we're not doing enough. And one of the best things that we can do for each other is to see each other, to listen to each other's stories, and to believe what folks are saying. So if you're looking for a way to make an impact in your organization on culture, on bottom line results, please take the opportunity this week to ask a peer for their story and to believe them. Whatever their identities are, wherever that fits, they are a marketer and a team member, a human being. So I would just encourage you to believe the stories of others, and it's going to make a huge difference in the way that you show up in your marketing.
Well said. I think that's a good note to end on. So, Rachel, thank you so much again for joining us here on Tech Qualified. This was such a fun conversation. I think our audience is going to have tons of little nuggets to take away from this. So, thank you so much again.
My pleasure.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks for checking out Tech Qualified. This show is brought to you by New North, a marketing agency that helps turn your small, scrappy marketing team into a growth engine. To find out more about New North or check out more episodes of this show, go to newnorth.com/techqualified.